please welcome to the stage, Lierre Keith.
So I went vegan when I was 16, and I did it for a long 20 years. Why? Well, I thought I was saving the world. I grew up on the East Coast megalopolis. As a young child, the heartbreak was overwhelming. I wanted the forest. I wanted deer. I wanted wolves. I wanted the wild. I had never seen it, but I wanted it. And we would visit my grandmother, driving through the horrors of northern New Jersey, and it was hell. This is Mordor. Yeah. But past the trauma of the active apocalypse, we'd arrive in the suburbs of Connecticut, which, don't laugh, was as close to a forest as I had ever seen. She had 3 whole acres, and she lived across the street from this sweet little river. There were shiny fish and striped snakes, implacable turtles and shy rabbits, and beneath everything, the music of the water and the whisper of the leaves. There's a reason it's called The Wind in the Willows. We were let loose all day to have our own adventures, the way that kids should. We come pre-primed as small mammals to take risks, to get hurt and get through it, to learn and to love the wild. And it was good. But for the rest of the year, everywhere, the last open spaces, the final scraps of nature, were turned into asphalt and ugly buildings. My heartbreak was overwhelming. Where were the animals going to go? Right now, the world loses 200 species every day. They have nowhere to go, except the long night of extinction. Why were humans doing this? That's been the driving question of my life. So at 16, I was reading serious books, burning to find an answer. And then I met a girl who was a vegan. That's the most common way that people convert. They meet someone who is a vegan and are convinced. She told me with this one simple act, I could protect the animals, feed the hungry, and save the world. So there's 3 important elements to this story. You have an impassioned, intelligent teenager. The gifts of youth are that incredible moral vigor, the fearless courage, and idealism. The world will always need people in this stage of life. She's also the inheritor of 10,000 years of planetary destruction, but she doesn't know where her food comes from. And I don't mean the monetary cost, but the cost to the circle of life. She has no direct experience of it, and no one is telling her. So to quote Taylor Swift, you're on your own, kid. The values that underlie the vegan ethic are not the problem. Justice, compassion, anything that questions human hubris, those are the only values that are going to get us to the world that we need. But is a vegan diet the best way to activate those values? And here's one of the problems. The plant people have slogans. We have real information that has to accumulate into knowledge and hopefully condensed into actual wisdom. But that takes time. It's a lot to explain and a lot to absorb, and it cannot fit in a slogan. Our hypothetical teenager needs to understand what agriculture is. So in very brute terms, you take a piece of land, you clear every living thing off it, and I mean down to the bacteria, and then you plant it to human use. So it's biotic cleansing. And what should be habitat for millions of creatures turns into salt and dust. This is Iraq, one of the places where agriculture started. No one in their right mind would call this place the Fertile Crescent now. Here's Iran. That's not a mountain, that's dust. That was soil. 1/3 of Pakistan is under risk of desertification. 150 years ago, that was a teak forest. Here's what agriculture has done in North America. I wanted so desperately to know where the forests had gone. Well, agriculture took them. And here's Europe. When I say wheat is murder, this is why. Another continent lost to humans' addictive hunger for annual grains. Once upon a time, there were untold numbers of tarpans and aurochs and ibex that roamed here. There were wolves and lions and bears. Now, only one major river is left flowing in Western Europe, and only one population of sturgeon still exists. Once, when the sturgeon returned to spawn, you could hear the fish coming for an entire day. You could hear them. No one in this room has heard the sound that water makes when 40 million years of persistence finds its way home. This is who else may be taken from you: the red squirrel, the turtle dove, the Scottish wildcat, the water vole. That's Ratty from The Wind in the Willows. Ratty. There are lists of the damned. You will need your hearts to face this. I know what I'm asking, but better a broken heart than no heart at all, because even a broken heart is still made of love. And here we are at the end of the world. 98% of the old-growth forests and 99% of the world's prairies are gone. There's nothing left to take. Agriculture is how we've been destroying the world. To get annual grains to grow, you have to eradicate the competition. You pull down the forest, you rip up the prairie. Agriculture rends the process of life itself, and the entire world is now falling through. So this is way bigger than what's dead on your plate. You have to ask, what died to get that food on my plate? In the case of agriculture, the answer is everything. And I want more than the number of dead and gone. I want them back. I know the vegans want that too. The values that inform the vegan ethic are not the problem. The problem is you can't stop there. Factory farming is a good start, but keep going. Why does factory farming exist? Because vast quantities of surplus grain made it viable. Well, what created those surpluses? Cheap fertilizer made from fossil fuel. Why was that invented? Because by 1950, the world was basically out of soil. Why? Because that's what agriculture is, and more of the same will not save us. The worst libel about ruminants is that they are responsible for some huge chunk of global warming. It's a lie. The ruminants and the grasses are the only creatures who can help stop global warming. This is what grasses do. They build soil, and their building block is carbon. This is what happens when grasses, ruminants, and their resident bacteria work together. The world comes back to life. If we repaired 75% of the planet's grasslands in under 15 years, atmospheric carbon would drop to 330 parts per million. That's well under the 350 red line. It's not too late. But the people who care most about the planet, our teenage vegan and her friends, they don't have any of this information, and they're making the wrong decision. They're also wrecking their bodies. I did catastrophic damage to mine, and here's why. So there's two problems with the plant-based diet. There is the problem of excess, and then the problem of deficiency. So there's an excess of sugar. It's basically nothing but sugar. You can call it complex carbohydrate if that makes you feel better, but your digestive tract has to break it into simple sugars. That's how it's absorbed. So it's just a pile of sugar. There's also an excess of omega-6 fatty acids. Without getting too technical, omega-6s are responsible for inflammation, so the entire population of the Western world is essentially on fire. An overabundance of omega-6s has been implicated in everything from Alzheimer's to arthritis. On top of that, we've been told to replace traditional fats like butter and lard with industrial seed oils. These are the oils that human beings have never eaten before. They were used for industrial applications like paint and glue, but now we're supposed to eat them. And in the US we did, and we all got sick. So for the deficiencies, there is a deficiency of protein, there's a lack of animal fats, and the vitamins that are only available in animal fats. So one example is vitamin D. There are no plant sources, none. Does not exist in plants. In a study of vegan children, almost a quarter of them showed signs of rickets in the summer, and in the winter, it was 48%. I have seen this in real life. And there's B12. There are no plant sources. And both adults and children have been permanently damaged by that lack of B12. Here's a quote: "Cognitive and language development, however, remained seriously retarded. This child will have lasting neurological disability because of his mother's vegan diet." And then there are all the babies that have died. So 9 months old, 11 and a half pounds. I don't know where that slide went. Don't ask me. All right, here we go. This one was 6 months old. No, we're doing it again. Yeah, all right. Yeah. She weighed 11 and a half pounds. Yeah. 3.5 pounds. My puppies weighed more than that at that age. 6 months old. It's grim. And this was a vegan community where one of the babies died. The rest of them were able to recover, but yeah, that's where it ends. So, iron. Heme iron is the only, heme iron is only found in red meat. And if you need more evidence that we evolved eating the megafauna of the African savanna, look no further. Heme iron should sit at the center of every single one of your red blood cells. It's the one that fits, and it's the only one that fits. It's what carries and then releases oxygen to every cell in your body, and you may have noticed we don't last long without oxygen. An archaeologist can look at a bone and tell at a glance whether it was from a hunter or a farmer. The hunter's bones are long and strong and disease-free. The farmer's bones are short, brittle, and bear scars of all kinds of diseases. In fact, the iron deficiency anemia is often bad enough to cause bone changes. And this is what some of those conditions look like. And some of these are intensely painful. So there's a phrase for this. We call it the diseases of civilization. And we accept these diseases as normal because we all have them, but there's nothing normal about this. We have these diseases because we've been eating the wrong food. What you get with that pile of sugar is high insulin levels, and that insulin does tremendous damage to your insulin receptors, which is what causes type 2 diabetes. It also creates inflammation throughout your cardiovascular system, and that's what causes heart disease. The grains themselves, especially wheat, are one of the main triggers for autoimmune diseases, and cancer eats sugar. That's what it eats. A study at Oxford University measured people's brains for 5 years. The vegans and vegetarians were 6 times more likely to suffer brain shrinkage. They had significantly smaller brains than those who ate red meat. They suffered bouts of aggression and anger. They lost 5% of their brains. That's 1/20th of their brains. And these are the results from a German study. The vegetarians were 2 to 3 times as likely to have mental disorders. So when you starve your brain of basic building blocks and fuel, the results are tragic. Depression, anxiety, addiction, all of this, including violent death. And if someone wants to ask me about eating disorders in the Q&A, I would like to talk about that, but we don't have time. And the teenage brain is especially vulnerable because it's under construction, so the damage can be permanent. The brain is building connections between neurons at a furious pace at that age, and those connections have to be myelinated. So myelin is the lipid sheath that encases all your nerves. We're a set of electrical impulses inside a watery environment, and you might wonder, how does that work? Well, it works because your nerves are insulated. So just like the wires in your car or in your house, cholesterol is an irreplaceable component of myelin. And if you're eating a plant-based diet, you will not have enough. Cholesterol has been so demonized, but it's this profoundly life-affirming substance. All your hormones are made from cholesterol. All of them. That means your sex hormones. And if you don't have enough cholesterol, your body shuts down the production of what you don't need right now to stay alive. So if you don't have enough cholesterol to make hormones, you definitely don't have enough to make a baby. Your body thinks you're starving, so no babies. And I've seen women struggle for years with infertility, and I know why, because I know what they're eating, and it's heartbreaking. The food I eat now actually does what veganism promised. It repairs habitat so the animals get to come home. It protects the local waterways because the soil is secured by the deep roots of the perennial plants. It restores the water table because those roots create the channels by which rain can actually enter the soil. It creates soil, which means more life, and it sequesters carbon at an extraordinary rate. Do animals die? One. One dies to feed me. Not thousands, and not entire species. In my time as a vegan, I thought I was fighting to save the wild, but I was only participating in its destruction. I thought my life was possible without death, but it's not. For something to live, something else has to die. That was a hard one, but it had to be faced. I thought I was eating the food that would protect me from disease, and instead I destroyed my insulin receptors. I stopped menstruating. I lost 20 years to useless depression. I got 3 autoimmune diseases, and I wrecked my spine. For the medical professionals, I have a grade 4 derangement at 4 levels. For the teenage vegans, I will be in morphine level pain for the rest of my life. You don't need to do this to yourselves. An entire generation of us have already been through this, and you are allowed to learn from our mistake. Mostly, if any of this leaves you curious or unsettled, I'm begging you to keep digging. Don't let veganism become a barricade to knowledge that you need, because we need you. The 200 species going extinct today, they need you. The wolves in the forest, the bison in the grasses, they need you. They need you to gather all your courage and face down the actual enemy. When bison are under attack, they pack into a tight circle. Protected at the center are the mothers and babies. Next are the older calves, weaned and vulnerable. A defensive ring of cows without young comes next. And finally, facing out, stand the bulls. If we all make that tight circle, mothers and babies of every species at the center, protected until the last, and plant our feet firmly on our still living earth, we can save this planet. We have love and the miracle of our animal bodies and the stalwart light of every dawn. Love is a verb. May that love call us to action. Thank you.